Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now let's begin. This happened when I was 12 years old on Halloween night. My family had decided to do something different that year instead of just trick-or-treating around our neighborhood. We were staying at a small family resort about an hour away from home. The resort was holding a Halloween celebration that weekend, full of activities, games, and even a haunted hayride. It wasn't a big place, maybe 10 cabins, a main lodge, a small lake, and an open field where they set up the hayrides and games. It was surrounded by woods on all sides. During the day it looked peaceful, even cozy. But once the sun went down, the woods turned pitch black, and the whole resort suddenly felt isolated and unnervingly quiet. We checked in that afternoon. I remember the smell of campfire smoke and candy apples in the air as soon as we arrived. Kids were already running around in costumes, even though it wasn't dark yet. My parents said the hayride would start around 7, and until then, there would be games and contests. So while they unpacked, I ran off to play. The resort had booths where you could toss rings for candy, carve pumpkins, and compete in a costume contest. The whole area was lit with orange lights and fake spiderwebs strung between trees. That's when I met another kid my age, Ryan. He was dressed as a skeleton and said his family was staying in the cabin next to ours. We hit it off quickly, played some games together, and got a decent amount of candy. As the evening came closer to 7, a crowd of families began heading toward the hayride area. The tractor was parked near a large barn, and the wagon had hay bales lined up inside for seats. There were maybe 20 of us who climbed aboard. The driver wore a scarecrow mask, and the staff dressed as zombies would jump out from behind trees to scare us. At first, the hayride was a blast. The torches along the trail flickered against the trees, and everyone was laughing or screaming in good fun. But halfway through, the ride entered a darker part of the woods. The tractor slowed down, and that's when I noticed him, a man standing just outside the circle of torchlight. He wasn't part of the hayride crew, I could tell immediately. He wore a black jacket, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He didn't move, didn't try to scare anyone. He just stood there completely still, watching. At one point, I'm almost sure we made eye contact. Even though I couldn't see his eyes clearly, I could feel them on me. My stomach tightened. I glanced around to see if anyone else noticed, but no one seemed to. When I looked back, he was still there. Same spot, same stance. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When the hayride ended and everyone got off near the barn, I turned back toward the woods, but he was gone. I didn't tell anyone about it right then. I figured maybe I was overreacting or just spooked from the haunted vibe. We went back to the lodge, where there were snacks, games, and a bonfire. My parents sat by the fire while Ryan and I went around collecting more candy. For a while, everything seemed normal again. But about an hour later, I saw him again. Ryan and I were near the snack table when I spotted someone standing at the edge of the field just beyond the lights. It was the same man, same black jacket, same hat. He was standing near the tree line, about 30 feet away, not talking to anyone, just watching. My heart started pounding. I nudged Ryan and whispered, "That's the guy from the hayride." Ryan glanced over and shrugged, saying maybe he was one of the workers or a parent. But I knew he wasn't. He wasn't interacting with anyone, and there was something off about the way he stood. Too still, too focused. When I looked again a few minutes later, he was gone. Around 9 p.m., most of the little kids had gone back to their cabins. The crowd was thinning out, but Ryan and I were still full of energy. He suggested we walk around the resort one last time before calling it a night. Behind the cabins, there was a dirt trail that led into the woods. Ryan thought it'd be fun to walk a little way down it, something spooky to end Halloween. I didn't want to go too far, but I didn't want to look scared either, so I agreed. We grabbed our flashlights and started down the trail, laughing and daring each other to keep going. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. The music and chatter from the resort faded until all we could hear was the crunch of our shoes on the path. We probably walked about 200 feet in before stopping near a clearing. There was an old sign nailed to a tree that said, "Private Property." We started throwing small rocks at it, joking around, until we heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, slow footsteps from deeper down the trail behind us. We froze. Ryan whispered, "Probably another kid." But it didn't sound like a kid. The footsteps were too heavy, too deliberate. I pointed my flashlight toward the sound, but the beam didn't reach far enough. Then the footsteps stopped. For a few seconds, it was completely silent, and then a man's voice broke through the darkness. "Hey there, boys." It was calm, but the tone made my skin crawl. Ryan and I turned toward the voice, and that S when he stepped into the edge of the light. It was him. The man from the hayride. The man who'd been watching. Same black jacket, same hat. He smiled slightly and said, "What are you two doing out here? You like candy?" Neither of us spoke. He reached into his pocket and pulled something out, an orange wrapper, a Reese's cup. "I got a bunch more of these in my cabin," he said. "Come on, I'll give you some." Ryan's face went pale. The man took a few steps closer. "You don't have to be scared," he said. "It's Halloween. I'm just giving candy out. I saw you boys on the hayride earlier." That's when I realized he had been watching us, specifically us. My stomach dropped. I grabbed Ryan's arm and whispered, "Run." We bolted. The man shouted something, I don't even remember what, and then we heard him chasing us. His boots slammed against the dirt path. I didn't look back once. All I could think about was the light from the resort ahead. My chest burned as we ran, but I didn't stop. When the glow of the bonfire came into view, I screamed for help. Adults turned toward us, startled. We ran straight into the crowd, gasping and crying. When I turned around, the man was gone. The trail behind us was empty. My parents rushed over and I told them everything. The man on the hayride, seeing him near the trees and then following us into the woods. Ryan backed me up on every detail. My dad and another man grabbed flashlights and went searching, but they didn't find anyone. Resort staff joined in too, and soon the police were called. They arrived about 30 minutes later and took our statements. They searched the area, checked cabins, and warned everyone to stay alert. That night, my parents kept the cabin locked tight and didn't let me out of their sight. I couldn't sleep. Every small sound outside made my heart jump. The next morning, police came back and told us they didn't find anyone matching the description. No break-ins, no missing cars, and no guests matching the man's look. They figured it was a trespasser from outside the resort. We packed up and left later that day. I remember staring out the car window, half expecting to see him standing in the woods again watching us leave. For weeks after that, I thought I saw him everywhere. On the side of the road, outside a store, even once near my school parking lot. It was always just my mind playing tricks on me, I think. Ryan said he couldn't sleep for days after it happened. The police never called again, and the man was never caught or identified. Now that I'm older, what scares me most isn't it what he did. It's what he could have done. If we had believed him for even a second, if we had taken one step toward him instead of running, I don't think I'd be here to tell this story. And every Halloween since then, whenever I see someone standing alone at the edge of a crowd, I think of that man. Because sometimes the people who look like they're part of the fun are watching for a very different reason. This happened 2 years ago on Halloween night of 2023. I'm a 25-year-old male now, but at the time I was 22. That day had already been long and exhausting. We had a big festival at work where parents brought their kids for various activities, competitive games, a costume contest, trivia for candy, and even a kids versus parents dodgeball match. It was a great time overall, but by the end of it, I was drained. For context, I work as a community worker, so organizing and running community events is pretty much what I do. It's rewarding, but also tiring. After everything wrapped up, I went home, ready to call it a night. About an hour later, around 6-something in the evening, my little sister called me. Her name's Savannah, not her real name, and she wanted me to take her and my nephew Jackson trick-or-treating. Neither our parents nor Jackson's parents felt like going, so as usual it fell on me, the cool big brother, to make it happen. Savannah was 15 at the time and Jackson was 11. Even though I was tired, I got up, threw on some clothes, and headed to my parents' house to pick them up. When I arrived, Savannah was still finalizing her costume. She was dressed as Raven from Teen Titans, complete with white makeup to give her that ghostly look. Jackson was Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat. Once Savannah was done, we got in the car and drove to a busy neighborhood known for great Halloween participation. I wanted to make sure they got plenty of candy. The night started off great. Every house we visited was friendly and generous. At one house, an older man was grilling hot dogs instead of giving candy. He said every Halloween he hands out food with protein because it's better for the body. Honestly, we could use more people like that. We passed tons of kids in creative costumes, and Savannah and Jackson got plenty of compliments. Everything about the evening felt normal, until it didn't. After hitting the last house, we started walking back to the car. It was about a 10-minute walk since we had gone pretty deep into the neighborhood. The crowd had thinned out, and the streets were much quieter now. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Across the street, standing in a dark yard with no porch light on, was a person dressed entirely in black. They were wearing a hooded cloak, an all-black outfit, and what looked like a mask. I couldn't see their face at all, not even a bit of skin. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but they were definitely looking right at us. I told Savannah and Jackson quietly, "There's a suspicious person across the yard. Look, but don't stare." Jackson laughed, assuming it was just someone trying to scare trick-or-treaters. But Savannah looked worried. She knew I carry a gun, a Glock that I keep in my backpack for protection. When I told them to stay close, she realized I was being serious. We kept walking, and I kept glancing behind us. The person stayed in the same spot but seemed to be watching. When we were only a few minutes from the car, I suddenly heard heavy footsteps behind us. Boots hitting concrete. I turned around and froze. It was the same person. Still all in black, but now I could see more details. A tactical vest, tactical boots, and pants tucked in. The mask was full spandex, covering their entire face. That changed everything. Someone dressed like that usually means they're armed. My instincts kicked in. I whispered to Savannah and Jackson, "Listen carefully. Don't stop walking. Don't look back. That person I mentioned is following us. They're behind us right now. Stay calm and just keep moving." Savannah understood right away. Jackson didn't fully grasp it, but obeyed. We walked quickly but tried not to panic. Every time I glanced back, the person kept the same distance but didn't stop following us. When we finally reached the car, they were still coming. That's when I made a bold move. I turned, pulled out my Glock, and pointed it directly at them. "Why are you following us?" I demanded. The person immediately raised their hands, startled. Then they slowly removed the mask, revealing a woman, maybe in her 30s. She looked blank, emotionless. "Why are you following us?" I repeated. She finally spoke, her voice flat, almost robotic. "I'm an undercover cop. I was told there was a break-in, so I came to check it out. That's why I was outside that house. When you looked at me funny, I assumed you were the one who did it, so it would be wise to lower that weapon, or I could have you arrested for threatening an officer of the law." I hesitated, then slowly lowered my gun. I didn't want to risk an arrest or scare the kids even more, but something felt off. Her story didn't make any sense. If she was investigating a break-in, why was she just standing outside the house staring at the street? Why would me looking at her funny make her think I was the suspect? And why wear a hooded cloak if she was undercover? I asked her all of that. If you're undercover, why wear tactical gear? Wouldn't that give away that you're law enforcement? And what's the point of the cloak? She didn't answer. She just stared. But now there was something malicious in her eyes. Then she smiled, a slow, creepy, unsettling smile, and said, "If you didn't have that gun, this night would have ended a hell of a lot different for you." Right after she said that, 4 figures emerged from between 2 nearby houses, walking straight toward us. All of them were dressed in tactical gear but without the cloaks. That was enough. I told Savannah and Jackson to get in the car now. They ran for it, and as soon as they were inside, I jumped in, started the engine, and sped off. As I looked back, the woman was still standing there smiling. The others, 3 men and 1 woman, stood behind her, completely expressionless, their faces blank and lifeless. The entire drive home was silent. None of us said a word. I dropped Savannah and Jackson off safely, made sure they got inside, and then went home, and my mind racing. Why us? The neighborhood was full of people. Why target me and 2 kids? I wish it ended there, but a few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. It was a picture of my car parked outside my apartment complex. That's when I called the police and told them everything. The encounter, the woman, the group, the picture. They took a report but said they couldn't investigate without a direct threat. Typical. Out of pure curiosity or stupidity, I went back to that same house where I'd first seen her standing. A man in his 40s answered the door. I asked if he'd experienced a break-in on Halloween night. He looked confused and said, "No, I went to bed early, didn't notice anything strange." When I told him what I saw, he had no idea what I was talking about. I thanked him and left. At that point, I knew the undercover cop story was a lie, but the question remained. Who were they? How did they know my number? How did they know where I lived? Had they been watching me for a while? Were they planning something that night, and my being armed ruined it? Those thoughts messed me up for months. I became paranoid, started therapy, and installed a Ring camera at my front door just to feel safe again. It's been 2 years since that night. No more strange texts, no more sightings. But I still think about it often. Writing this helps me process it, and maybe warn others. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Always be aware of your surroundings. You never know who might be watching you, or why. It's frightening how easy it is to stumble into danger just by existing. And I truly believe that night, being armed saved our lives. My name is Roger, and this happened to me on Halloween night 3 years ago. I'm 29 now, and back then, I was still the new guy at my office, stuck with all the shifts nobody wanted, including holiday hours. So when Halloween, my favorite holiday, finally rolled around, I was genuinely excited. I wanted a quiet night to relax, hand out candy, and watch horror movies. At the time, I lived alone in a small house on the outskirts of town. My girlfriend, who normally stayed with me, was out of town visiting her parents. The neighborhood wasn't isolated, but it got very quiet once the trick-or-treating hours ended. Most families shut off their porch lights by 9. Since I didn't have kids, I handed out candy until the last few visitors came by. I was used to the occasional ding-dong ditch prank every Halloween, so nothing really fazed me. That year, Halloween fell on a Saturday. It was chilly but clear, the kind of night that made you want to stay in and get cozy. Around 10:30, I was lounging on the couch, half watching The Conjuring and picking through a bowl of leftover candy. I hadn't seen a single kid in over an hour, so when I suddenly heard a faint knock at my side door, I figured it was just a few stragglers. I got up, opened the door, and saw no one. The driveway was empty. The only sound was the rustling of leaves in the cold wind. I brushed it off, assuming some kid was playing pranks, and went back to my movie. 15 minutes later, I heard it again. This time, it came from the back door, the one that led out to my small wooden deck. That immediately made me uneasy because nobody ever used that entrance. I muted the TV and listened. The house was completely silent, and I could clearly hear the metal rattle of the back doorknob being tested. Slowly, carefully. Whoever it was wasn't just knocking. They were checking if the door was unlocked. My heart started pounding. I crouched low and crept into the kitchen, trying not to make a sound. That's when I saw him through the small window above the sink. A man was crouched near the back door, wearing dark clothes and a cracked Halloween mask pushed up on top of his head. In his hand, he held a crowbar. He wasn't trying to hide. He was deliberate, calm, like he knew I was inside and didn't care. I backed away quietly and dialed 911, whispering what was happening. The operator told me to stay on the line, lock myself somewhere safe, and not engage. I didn't want to risk slamming any doors upstairs, so I stayed crouched at the top of the staircase, clutching a kitchen knife and whispering updates. From my spot, I could see him move away from the door. Then came the faint pop of a window screen being pried off. My blood went cold. He was at the basement window now, I whispered. He's at the basement, barely able to speak. The dispatcher said officers were already on their way. A few seconds later, I heard the sharp crack of glass breaking. He was smashing the window. This wasn't a smash and grab. He knew someone was home. Burglars don't usually break into occupied houses. This was something else. I stayed completely still, barely breathing while the dispatcher kept me talking quietly so I wouldn't panic. Then, out of nowhere, I heard footsteps crunching through the dead leaves outside. He was circling the house. I held my breath, clutching the knife so tight my hands hurt. Then finally, headlights swept across the blinds, flashing red and blue. Relief hit me like a wave as police cars pulled up out front. The man bolted, sprinting across my yard, but he didn't get far. I watched from the stairs as the officers tackled him near my driveway and dragged him away in cuffs. Only then did I realize how hard I was shaking. One of the cops showed me what the man had been carrying: the crowbar, duct tape, and zip ties stuffed in a backpack. This wasn't a burglar looking for valuables. This man had a plan, and it was something far worse. The officers later told me he had a long record of home invasions, and he was suspected in a few missing person cases. To this day, I hate being home alone on Halloween. It's supposed to be about scares and fun, but now every time I hear footsteps or knocking outside, I can't help but remember that night. The part that haunts me most is knowing if the police had been just 5 minutes later, I might not be here to tell this story. Weeks later, they called to follow up and told me what else they found in his bag: a .45 handgun, several kitchen knives, and rope.